students, in our last class we have seen why the cell is called a building block of the life, and now we are moving on to the discovery of cell. So the scientist Robert Hooke, he discovered cell in which year? You see, in the year 1665. So Robert Hooke discovered the cell. He also gave the name the cell. That means he coined the term, the word itself. The cell was given by Robert Hooke, and it was in the year 1665. Now the thing is that where did he find cell? He found cell when he was observing slices of cork. So basically Robert Hooke was observing the slices of cork under microscope, and accidentally he found cell, and ultimately he turned the coin cell. So this is who did it, when he did it, and how he found it. Now let us see why he called it as cell. So cell is basically a term which is used for referring to a room or a compartment. So when we say cell, it actually means compartments, or we can also say as room. So cell is what? It is like a room. So what a room looks like? It is bounded by walls. We will call this as room. The cell is also something like that. When he observed the cell under the microscope, he saw some honeycomb structure. Honeycomb means the beehive. In the shape of the beehive, how the honeybees are making the rooms for themselves, just like that only, similar to that, they found that cell. He found similar structure, and then he called them as cells. Like you see, suppose he found this piece of cord. Here he saw like this small room-like structure. Okay, he saw like this small room-like structure, and he called them cells. Now he called it, these are partitioned compartments. Partition means something where there is partition. Like if I say this is 2 room and it has a partition. So here also you can see between the cells there is small partition. That means one cell is separated from the other cells. So this is why he called these small room-like structures as cell. So Robert Hooke, he gave the name cell to this structure, and today we all know it as cell only. It hasn't changed since 1665. And where he found it? He found it in the slices of cork. So I think this should be clear by now, that discovery of cell. So now come to the cell theory. So in cell theory, we will see the relationship between the cell and the living organism. That is how a cell is related to the living organisms. Now this cell theory, it was given by Claydon and Swan. They are 2 scientists, and together they gave these three statements, which is the cell theory. So Claydon and Swan, they gave the cell theory. So according to the cell theory, the first statement is that all living organisms are made up of cells. So according to them, what they said is that all the living organisms, they are made up of cells. There is no living organism which is not made up of cells. So basically what will happen? That means the cell is what? It is the structural and functional unit of all living beings. Like today in the morning we have seen that it is the building block. Why building block? Because all the organisms are made up of the cell. So definitely the first statement we can see that it is true, that all living organisms are made up of cell, and also it is the basic structural unit. These also we have seen in that example only, that the cell is the basic unit. Everything starts from a single cell. And it is also the functional unit. That means that the cell can also function by itself. So it is the minimum thing, or it is the minimum existence of life. That means it is the smallest portion of life. The cell, if it is a single cell, it is still alive, and if we break the cell, no more life. So what is there? The smallest form of life is nothing but a single cell. So therefore it is the functional unit also, because it can function, it can survive, it can breathe, then not exactly breathing, but it can respire, it can have nutrition, it can remove the waste, and also it can reproduce. So that means it is performing all the life processes, all the compulsory or fundamental processes that the living things do. So therefore the basics, functional as well as structural unit of life, that is unit of living beings, is the cell. Now come to the last point, that is new cells are created by the division of the pre-existing cells. This is very important term, the pre-existing cells. This means that whenever there is formation of new cell, whenever a new cell is formed, it does not come out from the air. It cannot, there is no magic that I will do like this and a new cell will come. So what is happening, that there will already be one pre-existing cell. Pre-existing means something that is existing from before only, something that is already present. So a normal cell, any cell, it will divide to give new cells. So that is what it means, that new cells are created by the division. This original cell, it will, suppose this was a cell, it divided to form new cell. So created by the division, it divided from the pre-existing cells. So these are the 3 points, and all these are true. For each and every living organism, all these statements are true till today. So we call this 3 statement as the cell theory. Again, let us see. The first one is that all the living organisms are made up of cell. The second one is that the cell is the basic structural as well as functional unit of all the living organism. And the third point is that a new cell will be formed from a pre-existing cell. So this pre-existing cell, it will divide and it will give rise to 2 new cells. So this is the cell theory. So next thing is variation in cell. Variation means what? Variety, different forms, different types. So all the cells are not same. The cells can be of different types. And those variation, that means all these varieties that we have got, all these different type of forms of cell that we have got, it will depend upon some of the characters. Okay, not all the cell have same character, and also one cell may have many characters. So therefore we will categorize them on the basis of different characters. So the first character that we are going to see is the number. So the first thing is the variation in number. Variation in number. So when I say variation in number, what will it mean? That means there is different form basing upon the number of cells. That means how many cells are there. On the basis of that, we can divide the types of cell, and we will divide it into 2 categories. The number A is unicellular. A will be unicellular. And point B is multicellular. Multicellular. So here you see variation in number. The number of cells, on the basis of that, we are dividing into unicellular and multicellular. Now, look at this term, uni. Okay, this term is uni and the second term is cellular. Uni means one. This uni, it means one. So, in the organisms which have only one cell, there are some organisms who are made up of only one single cell, and those organisms will belong to this category, that is unicellular. So how many number of cells are there? One cell only. Next term you see it is multicellular. What does multi mean? Multi means many. There are many cells in these organisms. So here we can say that multi means many or multiple. There are many cells. So those organisms which are made up of more than one cell, who have more than one cell, those are called as the multicellular organisms. Now try to think of examples. Which kind of organisms have one single cell? A very nice clue would be if there is only one cell. That means it will be very small, something that we cannot see with our naked eyes. So what we learned? We have already seen that there are a category of living beings which we cannot see with our naked eyes. What was that? The microorganisms. Yes, most of the microorganisms, they are unicellular. Like the bacteria, there is the paramecium, there is amoeba. All these are what? Examples of unicellular organism. That means their body is just a single cell and it performs all the normal activities with the help of that single cell. And in case of multicellular, that means what? Many cells together, they are forming the multicellular organism. Just like today in the morning I have shown you that what will happen? The cell forms tissue, tissue forms organ, organ forms organ system, and ultimately a organism or an individual. So ultimately what? Those are the multicellular organism. And in there also I have given example, person, I have given animals, I have given plants. So these are what? Visible with our eyes, as well as they have many cells in them, and all these cells together, they function, and therefore we can call that those animals are multicellular. Okay, now in case of the multicellular, there is one very important thing. The multicellular organism, they start with a single cell. They are single, but this, even though they are multicellular, they are starting with a single cell. Just like the egg. The egg is what? It is a single cell. Only one cell is there. And from the egg only, what do we get? We get the hen, we get the birds and all other birds, the lizards and the snakes. So that is what? Those are multicellular organisms. But they will always start from a single cell. So this is one important point about the multicellular organism. So first one is unicellular, the second one is the multicellular. Unicellular, only one cell is there. Multicellular, many cells will be there. So these two categories are based upon variation in number. That means it is basing upon the number of cells present. So for variation of cell, this was the first point. Variation in number, we got two parts, unicellular and the multicellular organism. I hope this is clear. Now the next thing is based upon the shape. So in our next class, we shall see how there are different type of cells, or how there are different categories basing upon the shape of the cell. So for today this much only. I hope you have understood, and if not, you can contact me.